My man,
You?
can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
You cannot hear me. All right. What about now? Can you hear me now?
Hold on one second. One second.
Testing, testing, one, two.
There you go. I can
Testing.
hear you.
All right. What's up, bro?
What are you doing? I was sitting there. I was
Yo,
wa- I was watching your streaming, and I'm like,
yo, I don't know. There was I jumped in the wrong studio, I guess, when when I came into the app.
I'm watching this guy. He's talking about me, but I'm not here.
Yo, I'm sitting there wondering, like, damn, what happened to Christian?
I'm sitting there,
Did
sitting
you
there
hear?
listening.
Did you hear what I was talking about?
I did. Yeah, yeah.
So I was kind of going off on a little bit of a rant there because I didn't have you to bounce ideas off of. But what I was talking about, for those of you that are now joining this live stream, was the people out there who are struggling to figure out where to even get started. I was telling Christian that I spoke to a client this week, and they're like, "Yeah, I want to buy a house, Steve, but like it's so far out of the realm. I'm so far behind on bills, and I got so many late payments, and I just don't even know where to start. So it's so far out of reality that I don't even know where to start."
Right. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Christian. How do you tackle goals? If you have something that you want to accomplish, how do you tackle them?
Well, I mean, if it's a real goal, sometimes people put goals out there that like pie in the sky type goals, and they don't really plan on attacking them. But if it's, I mean, I always set for myself. I'm kind of a natural procrastinator, so I'll set a deadline for myself. Like whether it's go like I mean, I used to smoke for many years since I was young, and I quit for the last time 7-8 years ago. But every time I did quit, I would set a date. I would say like, all right, like whether it's my birthday or whether I never did New Year's, but usually it was like around my birthday or something like that, or some sort of event. And I would so leading up to that, I would just keep smoking, but knowing that that day was coming, and then just cold turkey cut it. Same thing. Like I've always gone on and off between working out, going to the gym. I've worked out my whole life since I'm like 19 years old, but everybody kind of goes on and off the wagon
Yeah.
when it comes to that too. And it's a similar thing. Like when I'll set a goal, I'll set a date for myself, and then I'll just stick to that date because it helps me as that date is coming, kind of get my mind ready.
Yeah.
And then I just then I fully dedicated. But I mean, everybody has their ways of doing it. Some people have vision boards. Like we're in sales. If your goal is to whether it's buy a new house or a car or whatever material thing, or you start a family, it doesn't have to necessarily be a material thing. Like people put like a vision board together where they'll put pictures of it from a magazine and something in front of them. Like any coaches that I had, like if I, when I've had sales coaches and I had an income goal, the very first thing and like the first few calls that they would say is write it down on a piece of paper, on a post-it, and I would stuck it to my monitor, which I'm in front of every day,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't not see it, and it helps you kind of refocus when you get distracted and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep. I'm a huge fan of whiteboards.
Yep.
Like in my office, I've got 1, 2, 3. I got 4 whiteboards in my office, and like I just write down my goals on the whiteboard, so that way I'm constantly reminded.
Yeah, you can't not see it. You put it somewhere where you're going to be seeing it every day. And because everybody gets distracted, and you can fall off track, and that's fine. That's human nature. But having that in front of you, where something you got to see every day, really does help. And vision boards is the same thing. Like whether it's to buy a second home, or your first home, or an investment property, or whatever it is, visualize it. Visualize you being there, but then it takes discipline after that. And it's and in our business, especially, like if you're not disciplined, if you're not showing up every day, your sales cycle goes up and down because you might be focused for a few weeks or months, and then once people build up a pipeline, then they kind of fall off. Staying consistent, is really the key to really in sales anyway. But when you're talking about, I can definitely, I'm seeing a lot of people feeling the pain of inflation, not just, with mortgage rates and stuff like that, but when you're talking about in saving, I mean, if your grocery bill went from a month to $400 a month, that might have been that extra 200 might have been what you were saving before. Now, people are tapping into their savings to try to just pay their regular bill. So it's a very, tough time. Credit card interest rates are ridiculous, so people are, if they're living off credit cards. I mean, I just literally hung up the phone with a friend of mine who I've done a mortgage for, and he's owned a home for now 5 years, and it's appreciated by well over $100,000, probably about $200,000. They got 2 kids now, and they are, drowning in debt. I mean, they have a ton of credit card debt. They have personal loans. They have all these other stuff that they've accumulated now in the last couple of years because it is very expensive to live around here. And we have a second mortgage product for them that we're going to consolidate all that debt. And I mean, it's going to be like $3,000 a month savings when we consolidate all that stuff into a second mortgage. And those are the things that you and I have been talking about. When you have equity in an asset that you can borrow against, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, if you do find yourself in a lot of other debt, you can consolidate that against the equity of your house, and we're going to bring their total monthly payment down about $850 a month versus, I'm not even exaggerating, like $3,500, almost $4,000 a month in minimum payments they're paying right now.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it literally is like, it's life changing, at least for the moment, because you're gonna wipe all out. They can go back to saving, they can go back to spending money on their kids, and Christmas is around the corner, so it's really going to help them. But you couldn't do that unless you own a home.
Yeah. How'd that conversation start? Did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them?
Well, we've been reaching out since we rolled the product. We've been sending out mass emails and stuff like that. So it's probably a combination of both. It's a response to, the mass emails and marketing that we've been doing around the product. And then they eventually reached out to me.
Nice. So, and the reason why I asked that question is because, one of the things I was saying, before you hopped on, was that it's just about taking action, right? And it's making that decision to say, you know what, I'm not just going to sit idly by and just allow these credit card companies and these that become a victim of circumstance where it's like, you know what, there's no way I can get out of this. I've got 15 late, 30-day notices. I've got collections. There's no way I could save up enough money. But like, if you don't take action, like, what are you going to do? You're going to just sit on the sidelines. And, for those of us out there that are parents, you think that you're going to work every day and you're living check to check and you're doing whatever you can to put to put food on the table. But if you're not looking for that extra revenue stream or that extra way to kind of get out of the hole, you're really doing your children a disservice. And I don't want people to start coming at me saying, Steve, you're attacking me, but it's the truth, right? Like, you brought another child into this world, and now it's your responsibility to make sure that they have every single benefit or opportunity, at least, to have a better life than you did.
Yeah. I mean,
so many people just sitting by, just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, all right, well, first of all, take that victim mentality and throw it out the window.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And take hold of it, right?
Right. No, you're right. I mean, a lot of people, like life is happening to them as opposed to them being in charge of their own destiny. I mean, there's definitely a lot of that, and people don't like to sacrifice. I mean, I see people's credit. It's all I do all day long is talk about people's credit, their debt, their income, their expenses, what they can afford. And I help people, guide them. And I can't tell you how many times I'll run someone's credit report. They have, $1,000 car payment, and then they don't have any money saved for a down payment. And it's like, or, they can't get into a co-op, because they have $1,000 car payment and their debt ratio is too high, and they don't want to sacrifice not having the brand new car to buy a home, and again, it's not a judgment. It's just, it's an observation, it's what I'm seeing. I see it constantly, and those are tough conversations for me to say, like, well, if you didn't have the car,
yeah. Cause like, don't judge me, but at the same time, like, you're asking me for my opinion, and I'm giving you my opinion. I'll tell you what, if you take this $1,000 car payment, figure out a way to get this payment lower or remove it. Maybe maybe your first thing needs to do that. You need to get rid of that car and maybe buy a hoopty, buy something that you just point A to point B.
Sell the Range, get a Honda.
Yeah. Listen, Hondas ain't cheap these days either, man.
Oh, they're cheaper than a Range.
Yeah. But yeah, so all right, so let's kind of so now that we kind of got that, let's put that behind us now. So talk to me about mortgage news. I personally have felt the effects of this rate dip, rate raise. Like, what's going on out there?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, we were doing a victory lap a couple weeks ago, thinking that, with the Fed cut, that was the sign that everyone was waiting for, and they're going to continue to cut. And, but, it was definitely something that was out there in the back of, my mind and a lot of people's mind that, was, did they cut too much? Should they have cut? I definitely think they should have cut. Whether or not they should have cut 50 basis points, I don't know, because pretty much all this month, we were hoping that the same indicators that were causing the Fed to cut, which is lower inflation, weakening jobs numbers, would then cause them to cut more in November and then December. But in fact, the jobless claims reports, the retail sales report yesterday, everything is still showing signs of a strong economy, which again, in the macro is great. It's good that we have a strong economy, but when it comes to mortgage rates, it's bad. Because we need this. They need this. The only way to slow down inflation is to slow down spending, and by keeping rates high, that was the goal, which is to keep people from spending, and but also sensitive to the fact that businesses will get hurt and start laying people off, which is why they're looking at the jobs numbers to say, all right, are people being laid off, or jobs being lost, or are there job gains? And this month's report showed them like a massive increase, in gains, and
I saw in your weekly newsletter, and if you guys are not subscribed to Christian's newsletter, please send him an email or call him and get added to it. I saw that there was, I think the number that you put in your newsletter was like they were expecting something like 241,000, and it came out to be like 256,000, something along those lines.
Weekly claims, we were talking about the the unemployment rate and the monthly jobless claims that came out like 4 times better than expected. Which and again, I say this, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we do have an election coming up in 3 weeks, and for the last, I think I heard somebody on the radio saying out of the last 19 of these reports that have come out, I think 16 were revised lower, months later, and nobody pays attention to the revisions. They grab the headlines, and the headlines say the economy is strong, but
how is it that they're saying the economy is strong? If you went out there and I'll tell you what, let's do our own report, right? Like I'll go grab a microphone, I'll walk outside the street and I'll ask somebody, how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's your spending going? How's this going? And I guarantee you 99% of people are going to say it's tough out here.
It's brutal. And so to me, it's really just a disconnection of reality, of what actually your common person is dealing with when it comes to their bills, and and how interest rates are affecting them, and how inflation is affecting your common person who's just trying, who's on a fixed income or a salary or an hourly job, and wages are not going up. So prices are going up significantly and your wages are staying the same. That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, people that might have been saving for a house haven't been saving probably for the last 2 years. And in fact, they might be dipping into their savings even just to make ends meet right now and pay their rent. Well, and rents are going up also on top of it. So it's just a disconnection of really reality, I think. And I have a cousin. My cousin actually might even be listening to this. He's one of he listens to these. He's got an ATM business, a good ATM business in the city. He's got ATMs in the city, the Bronx, and his business is down significantly for the same reason. Like nobody has any money to take out the ATMs.
Yeah. Or they don't want to pay the $2 or whatever it may be that to get charged.
Right. And he's got a lot of, he's in bodegas, he's got them in like all different areas, and when he speaks to the people, the guys that own the bodegas and even the owners of the bodegas, they're saying what a struggle it is, and they don't have the people coming in. People aren't buying anything. So even the bodega owners are struggling because people aren't spending money. So from what we're talking about, you would think that is, for what the Fed is looking at, that's good. People are not spending money. That's what they want. They want, in a weakened economy, they want it slowing down. But again, it's for people that are trying to make ends meet and pay their bills. I mean, Powell had said in multiple meetings a year ago that there's going to be a lot of pain in this, and it's not like, and pain could be exactly that: dipping into your savings, running up high interest credit card debts, losing your job. That all is part and parcel of trying to slow down an economy that's kind of running too fast.
I'm very sympathetic, extremely sympathetic, because I've been there, and to people who legitimately have to borrow against their credit cards or live off their credit cards, right? So this is not necessarily directed at the people that have to do it, but the people that are just out here willy-nilly, like you said, buying, not wanting to sacrifice the range, and doing these things, like those people, I feel like need to really take a look in the mirror and say to yourself, like, what is it that I'm doing wrong here, and where can I cut? And again, going back to the whiteboard, like if you took, how many people I speak to that don't even look at their bank statements, and I'm like, hey, they're like, I'm like, hey, so have you looked at your bank statements? Do you know how much money does it cost for you to live every month? Oh, I don't know. I mean, whatever, $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month. I'm like, okay, well, what can you cut? Right? Like, listen, Apple, for all of their amazing accomplishments, they have no problem not reminding you that you have a subscription to an app that you're paying $14.99 a month for. Or, the streaming services and like things like that, or even like cutting the wire completely, right? Going off the grid and not having cable at all. Like, there's so much stuff on your phone. If you just have Wi-Fi, you could log on to YouTube and, oh, God forbid you have commercials on YouTube. Like, you don't got to pay for the premium. Right. Those little cuts right there. And if you don't put them on a board, or you don't put them on a spreadsheet, or you don't just write them down on a piece of paper, you're never going to know. And you're never going to get out of the situation you're in. And that whole blended like reality of what's going on in the streets versus what the Fed's looking at and what these people are looking at, that's scary.
Yeah. I mean, the best person for people to talk to, and I did it very early on when I was first married, is a financial advisor. Especially if you're planning on raising a family and putting them through college and buy a house and all these things that we're talking about, because the first thing that they'll do is they break down all your bills and what you're spending and where you're spending it. And if you have a goal, they'll help you set that goal. So if your goal is to buy a house, they'll say, okay, fine. Well, this is how much money you're bringing in. This is how much is going out. So you need to cut here, cut there. That frees up, and then they'll say, you might want to consolidate credit card debt. Even if you don't own a home, you can consolidate credit card debt into a zero interest credit card, and save a lot of money there and actually start paying down the principal. Because usually, give you at least 0% for a year or sometimes even longer. So you can get rid of the 21% by transferring to another card. The trick on those cards, though, is you got to pay it on time. If you read the fine print on those, if you're one day over the due date, it reverts back to 21%. So you got to make sure that, if you're getting those offers, read the fine print, because, you'll think you're getting zero. And then if you're one day over the due date, it's going to change.
Well, I remember a couple of weeks ago, you and I were having a conversation, and you're like, and you had said something to me that has stuck with me, where it's like, you don't want to, if you're going to pay a card off, right, you want to pay it off like a day or two before it's actually due, because that's the number that's going to get reported. Am I right?
Yeah.
So like all of these little tips and tricks out there, like people are just not taking advantage of it. It's very, like, to me, it's disturbing, but you're just allowing the government, or you're allowing society to kind of run your life, and you're just kind of going with the flow of things.
Right. Well, that's why there's a big push in teaching financial literacy in school.
Oh, yes. How to balance a checkbook.
One of the big, things that you're seeing more headlines on is getting cell phones out of schools and teaching financial literacy. Those are like the two biggest buttons right now when it comes to the public schools. And that because people just aren't financially literate and they don't teach it. So once you get into the world, the real world, and after school, unless you have parents that are guiding, helping you guide through, which people, not everybody has, that kind of guidance from parents. Where else are you going to learn it? And
I surely did not need to know, what the square root of something was, but I would have rather known how to balance my checkbook.
You might be doing square root calculations in your head without even realize you're doing
it. Yeah, that was a bad example, but you know what I mean. Like, especially all these things that we learned in school, like it's just crazy to me. And again, that just kind of goes back to, and I know we're just kind of, just.
I use 6th grade math every day, but I definitely don't use algebra at all.
That's one point, right? Like once they introduced the letters and it was like A, B, C, X, Y, Z, I checked out completely. It's like, listen, man, trigonometry, all this. I was just like, and I'm not hating on mathematics. The people need to learn that. People need to learn that who are going into science and going into math, and the people who are getting us and putting us on the moon. Those people need to know that stuff. But I had zero interest in that. Zero.
But I definitely did not need to know that.
Talk to me about so another hurdle besides like the credit and setting the vision, right? Like talk to me about like down payment assistance, right?
Mhm.
Like so like what's out there for the average Joe?
A lot. I mean, it's more than probably any other time in the last decade. There's always been the state of New York program, the Sony May program. That's been there as long as I've been doing mortgages. So that's a state agency that offers assistance, 3% of the price, up to $15,000 for those that qualify.
Yep.
In the city, you have, even more than that. You have neighborhood housing services. You have, NHS, which is a city agency where they offer grants for first time home buyers, also much bigger dollar amounts. But again, you have to qualify for this stuff. So most of the usually for the things that come through the city or come through Westchester County, some nonprofits, a lot of them are waitlisted. So you have to go to some home buying classes. They want to make sure you understand. So, speaking financial literacy, like a lot of those classes are very useful because they're doing exactly a lot of what we're talking about. They'll look at people's income, they'll look at their budget, they figure out what they can afford, and then they put their name in on the list to receive the grant when their name comes up.
Yep.
So those can take a little longer, but on the very immediate stuff that we offer, which is the Sony May program, we do immediately. I mean, as long as they qualify for the loan, when we do the loan, we just put in for the money. There's no wait list, there's no anything. The grant that we've been talking about, based on where people currently live, we give up to $9,000 in a grant. I just have to search where they currently live now, and they'll see if they're eligible for that $9,000. You could buy a house or a condo or even a 2-family house with as little as 3% down. We even have FHA products now where you can put as little as 1% down or no money down. We can the 3.5% that FHA requires, we can actually give on a second loan. So you can even do 100% financing through FHA. You can do 100% financing through VA. So down payment is not always the hurdle. It's more the bigger hurdle that I'm seeing is affordability. People's ability to afford a monthly payment in the area that they want to live. They don't have the income to support the monthly payment with their other expenses in there. So that's the bigger challenge is home prices and interest rates when it comes to a monthly payment. So that's the bigger challenge.
It's such a delicate balance, right? Like it's such a delicate balance. But just to kind of wrap up, I think that the most important thing that I would advise anybody is figure it out, right? Like know what your hurdles are. You want to buy something, figure out why you want to buy it, figure out what your motivation is for doing that. Who will it help impact? How will it help change your life? And then write it down and then figure out what the hurdles are and then try to tackle those one by one.
Right. And for a younger generation, what I will tell you is that you're not going to learn this off Google. You're not going to learn it over a text message. I'm getting a lot of people that are like starting off the conversation through text messaging, which is fine, but then they'll start asking like pretty complex questions on email and text message, which is very hard to articulate on email or text. So be prepared to pick up the phone and speak into it and talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes. So we can really go through and answer questions that you probably didn't even think to ask, but will be answered just in a conversation.
I was and just a side note based on what you just said, I was in the car this morning with my stepdaughter and I was like, all right, let me call this person. She's like, you love calling people. I'm like, yeah, because I don't want to be texting. There's certain things that you get misconstrued.
Oh my God, yeah. You can't detect tone, unless you put emojis and smiley faces and everything else. And even then, tone is lost. There's so much that gets lost, especially in our business. There's so much to know.
Yep.
You're not going to get it done in a text message, especially as a first-time home buyer. It's just not going to work. You're going to be more confused and very frustrated, and start probably even getting angry, and as opposed to just picking up the phone. So.
Just as a final thought, what is the current average on a 30-year fixed right now?
They're back into the upper sixes now. They're
6.7, 6.8,
5, 6, 8. It depends on it always depends on the scenario, but anywhere from like 6.5 to 6.8 on an average 30-year fix right now.
Okay.
So, where we were just seeing high fives for a minute.
Yeah.
We were there. We were getting
just a little bit.
So,
A little bit of sunshine. All right, Christian, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Anytime, Steve. Thank you.
See you next week.